All button arcade controllers are going through a golden age right now, and we're starting to see new contenders enter the market at a good pace. While most of the latest models seem to be targeting a small form factor, extra buttons, or even cool LCD screens, there's one newcomer advancing things in a different direction. This is the Maestro S3, and today we're going to find out how this brand new leverless controller distinguishes itself from the pack. Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. I've been very excited to get my hands on a Maestro S3. It's an interesting product by QRD, who are taking their first dip into the world of leverless controllers. The S3 costs $169.99 in dollars and 134 Great British pounds. It's compatible with PS4, Nintendo Switch, PC, Android and iOS. QRD has claimed that a future firmware update will bring the highly coveted PS5 compatibility, but for now, please subscribe to the channel and ring the bell icon for any updates on that. QRD kindly sent this over to me for review, and whilst I do get to keep it, they have no control over what I say about it. You can find a link to this product in the description below after we're done here. But first, let's take a closer look at this intriguing leverless controller. First impressions matter, so before I get onto the more interesting features in a bit, let's talk about what's going on visually. On the face, we have a clean, minimal design with the standard set of directional, jump and action buttons in a semi-noir layout. I call this a semi-noir layout because the angle isn't as pronounced as something like the Hori Hayabusa. My Kitsune has a Vuelix layout and the difference is quite subtle, but the general consensus is that there's not much difference between the two layouts, and it ultimately comes down to preference. The buttons are injection molded plastic with injection molded housings, and it's got that nice arcade style smoothness on the sides, so techniques like the slide for 360 moves are super easy. The micro switches on the inside are hot swappable, which I'm quite excited about because that means experimentation is going to be quite easy if I want to try different switches, and we'll do a bit of modding later. The up button is 30mm and all other buttons are 24mm. The function keys and the touchpad is neatly packed in the middle. If you're on a PlayStation, you need to press Q to bring up the home screen. All the essentials are here. They're easy to press and tactile. And a weird detail to note is that the R3 key sounds slightly muted than the others. It's not a big deal, but worth mentioning. On the top near the USB socket is an easily accessible reset button. For the aesthetic OCD crew, the jump button isn't perfectly aligned in the middle, and the distance of the buttons to the sides is uneven. If you're not looking for these details, they won't bother you or affect the performance of this controller at all. And of course, there is the RGB. QRD has installed transparent rims as standard, so we can enjoy the glorious colors much easier. We can cycle through colors, have it pulsing, or turn them off. All this lives in a sandwich style plastic housing that's 300 by 200mm and 31mm thick. It feels very light at just 800 grams. I don't recall ever coming across a wireless all button controller that isn't made to order, so if it exists, feel free to let me know in the comments. This is certainly the first wireless all button controller I've ever tried, and I think this feature is a big deal. I don't have to sit here and tell you how convenient it is to not have cables on a controller, especially if you have pets and kids, or you're just lazy like myself and you want to keep the controller ready to use without having to plug it in or tidy it away when you're done. It uses Bluetooth for its wireless interface, which has its pros and cons, but if it's good enough for the DualSense, it should be fine here. It's fitted with a 1200 mAh battery, which QRD rates for 8 hours with the LEDs on, and through my testing, this seems accurate. The wireless range is 8 meters, not that you'd want to be sitting that far away from your TV anyway, and it charges in 3 hours with a retention of 30 days. This wireless feature alone makes the Maestro S3 a strong candidate to take over as my daily driver. If you run out of charge or need to connect to a Brook converter to play PS5 games, you can go the traditional wired route. Another unique feature on this controller is the onboard audio output. This means you can connect wired headphones to it for a semi-wireless audio experience. and something you might find useful if your gaming headset runs out of batteries and you need to use headphones desperately. It only goes one way, so even if your wired headphones have a microphone, it won't transmit that through this output only socket. The S3 also comes with a mobile phone attachment accessory. I'm not a big mobile gamer myself, but I think this is a very thoughtful and clever addition to the overall package, and it proves that QRD are serious about catering to mobile gamers. You might be thinking that the wireless connectivity and audio output are already features you've seen in other controllers before, so why am I so excited about them? The point is that these features are not commonly seen in a ready-built all-button arcade controller. And even in the world of levered arcade sticks, these features took a while to arrive. I don't know if we will see these features more often in the future, but it does indicate that leverless controllers are developing quickly and catching up with the world of arcade sticks. The S3 isn't just about giving us the bells and whistles, it also has some features that some gamers might find helpful. First of all, let me show you a really cool feature of the Maestro S3. You can turn on the PS5 or PS4 wirelessly. It does have to be in PS4 mode though, so you'd have to plug it in and use it as a PS4 controller before you can do this the first time. But yeah, that's a pretty cool handy feature to be able to turn on the PS5 without plugging it in, just like a normal DualSense controller. Let's go over some of the features of the Maestro S3 then. The instruction booklet is very helpful, so I recommend keeping hold of these, because although the button combinations are easy to pull off, there are quite a few of them. So let's start with changing the LED color. This is as simple as holding the L3 and R3 buttons for 2 seconds. We can cycle through different colors here, or we can turn them off completely and also choose a breathing pattern. I'm just going to leave it on this fuchsia kind of color. We can change the SOCD function. This is important if you want to go to tournaments and you want to be using the correct SOCD setting. So we change the SOCD function by holding the option button and up at the same time. And when we see the flash, we know it's worked. So let me see which mode we're in now. So we're in SOCD 1, which means that down and up equals up. Let's do this again, and we'll be in SOCD 2, where down and up equals neutral. That did not work. Let me try that again. Right, I think I was in easy mode there, that's why. So as you can see, we're in SOCD 2 now. Down and up equals neutral, and this is what you need for Street Fighter 6 tournaments. And there's a third mode called easy mode, which is described as similar to SOCD 1. So up and down will equal up, but it also helps to pull off certain motions easier. So the way QRD explains it to me is that it helps with motions like half circle forward and half circle back. So sometimes you might be inputting your half circle and miss the down input, but this SOCD mode will fill that motion in for you. This isn't really helpful for me because I'm pretty good with my half circles anyway, but I suppose if you're a beginner and you're not so good with your motions yet, this might be quite helpful. But again, for seasoned players, this might not make too much of a difference to you. One of the interesting functions is that we can change the latency settings. So it says here that low latency settings are good for old or emulated arcade games, and the highest latency setting, which I think they've reversed the wording here, but maybe they mean the highest speed, is good for modern games. There's also an automatic mode that will just choose the best function for you. But just to illustrate how it looks, I'm going to put it on the lowest latency now. And we do that by pressing Option and the third punch key for 2 seconds. So the lights flash to indicate that it's worked. So this is on the lowest setting, and I'm going to put it on the highest setting later, and maybe we can see if there's much difference between the response time of me pressing the button and seeing it come up on screen. So to put it on the highest latency setting, I have to hold Option key and the fourth kick. Lights flashing, that's indicated that it's worked. It might not be as easy to spot in games like Street Fighter 6, but I'm thinking this kind of function is good if you like to play emulated games, 2D fighting games and other things that you might find on MAME or Neo Geo emulators and stuff like that. I'm going to set it back to the automatic mode, which is Option and 2K. Okay. There's also a function that switches between X input mode and D input mode, where D input mode is better for older emulated games, but I'm not going to demonstrate that today. What I will show you is that it works perfectly fine with a Brook converter. So now that we have it in PS5 mode, it means we can play the PS5 version of Street Fighter 6 without the 8-minute timeout. And this works perfectly fine with the Brook converter. I don't sense any kind of lag or any problems at all. And I have played this for longer periods, so I know for sure that it works beyond the 8-minute timeout for controllers that aren't compatible. The S3 is very light, and to achieve this low weight, QRD has opted for low density materials. After a brief stint in the world of mechanical keyboards, I realised that I'm partial to folky, creamier sounds when I hit buttons. Out of the gate, the S3 sounds quiet, but also hollow at the same time, so I decided to experiment with changing the sound signature. And as all keyboard enthusiasts know, the easiest way to do that is to fill things up with foam. Opening up the controller is very easy. There are 8 soft knobs I had to remove first, and a Phillips head worked perfectly for the screws. I had some foam from old microphone packaging, so I cut that up and filled out the empty spots in the chassis. The S3 uses its own custom MX switches. They are linear switches and very quiet, but just for experimentation, I'm going to try the Leo box that came with my Hope 42 G16. Check out that review after this video if you haven't seen it already, and the Otemu Silent Cream Yellows. So I very quickly decided that the Leo box did not play well with this chassis, and that's not how I want this controller to sound. The foam seemed to make a good difference by dulling some of the hollowness, and I'm sure craftier modders out there can find better materials to fill this in with. Hopefully you can tell from my footage that if you want to open it up to stuff it with foam or experiment with switches, it's very easy to do these things. QRD are onto something good here with their first dip into the leverless world. I enjoyed whacking these big arcade style buttons, and I like that the matte finish isn't a fingerprint magnet. I did have some issues with inconsistent inputs when pressing 2 buttons simultaneously, although I'm not sure if that's an issue with my mods causing problems or simple human error. But QRD has been very responsive to my concerns, and it seems that their engineers are continuously improving things as they go, so I won't be surprised if there are a couple of firmware updates in the near future. I'm a fan of their function button and touchpad design, but I would prefer a larger chin for my palms, although that's because I'm a lazy player and don't like to float my hands the way I should. I love that they are putting premium features into a controller at this price point, and I really hope that this is the beginning of more leverless controllers with wireless functionality. It's probably never going to be tournament viable, but a large percent of players out there aren't tournament players anyway. We want convenience, we want it to work, and we want good value. As a PS5 gamer, having to use a Brook converter at this point in time takes away one of the best features of the S3. But if I was a PC or PS4 gamer, this would definitely be on the top of my list for a daily driver, especially with the input and latency options available for retro games. Going forward, it would be amazing if QRD could implement native PS5 functionality, and if they go for an S3 Pro or S4 model at some point, I would like to see them focus on a more premium build with a less hollow sounding chassis, whilst keeping a wireless functionality and SOCD options. Anyway, how does the S3 sound to you? Does the wireless function excite you as much as it excites me? Is the headphone socket something you would use? Let me know in the comments what you think, and as always, links are in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.